Episode 232 of the White Cat Outdoors podcast, bring you to the table while we talk about the outdoors. Well, turkey season's wrapped up. Almost everybody in the crew got a bird this year. It was a fun year. A lot of birds died in a short amount of time, and it was just a really fun year. We had a double. Tom got his first longbeard. I got my best bird. Austin, laying him down like he always does. So it was a great turkey season. But it's over now, and it's kind of like that lull between spring gobbler and the fall, back to deer hunting. And a couple years ago, we found that there's another season in between, and that's rattlesnakes here in Pennsylvania. So we've been doing that for a few years now and absolutely love it. It's another excuse for us to get outside. It's, something different that you don't get to do a whole lot. And it really helps fill that void between, the two main seasons. So if you're from Pennsylvania, urge you to give it a try if that's your thing, or if you're close to Pennsylvania, or if you got them in your state, go ahead and give it a try. It's a blast, and we hope you guys enjoy it. If you're thinking about going for your first time, this would be the perfect episode to listen to. And on that note, I'm just going to quit rambling and we'll get into it. Stay tuned.
And then I looked dead at his antlers. I got out of the truck, and when I slammed the door, I heard gobbles all around me.
Let's see it.
Alaska, moose, spot and stalk. That is the bucket list. I agree.
White Cat Outdoors. White Cat Outdoors.
Hello, everybody. Welcome. Glad to have you at the table with us. We're going to talk about the outdoors tonight. The gang's all here. Austin, Nick, Tom, everyone.
What's going on?
Great to have everybody.
Hey, everyone.
We were talking before the podcast about what we were going to talk about tonight. So I'm going to turn it over to Tom because he's the expert in this field, and we'll get into it.
So as you avid outdoorsmen know, snake season, rattlesnake season that is, and copperhead season is rapidly approaching.
Mm-hmm.
Or here in PA, as we call it, venomous snake season.
Yeah.
And that's about all I have.
No, the season, by the time you're listening to this, the season will have begun. It starts on June 8th. And we didn't go at all last year.
We were so busy getting set up for Tom's wedding and the palooza and all that stuff. So
yeah, and your wedding's not near as important. So
yeah,
we're
well,
not
it's my wedding, so I can figure out a way to get out of it.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, not out of the wedding. I don't want to.
Well,
don't
clip
that. Don't clip that. No,
you have the
get out of a
ultimate
weekend. Get out for a weekend.
Yeah.
Man, wouldn't that be nice to be like recovering from a snake bite or something?
That would be pretty. I'm sure Kayla would love that.
Yeah.
She would
Pretty
be real
neat.
So yeah, we didn't get out at all last year, which big bummer.
Yeah,
Nick
it
and I were
sucked.
pretty upset about that. But after that, I was like, you know what? I don't want to do that again this year. I definitely want to get.
I don't want a life without snake hunting.
Yeah, it's not the life I want to live. That's not what I'm about.
If I can't snake hunt, there's no reason for life.
Right.
Yeah.
Snake is life.
Snake is life. So we're definitely going to be having some snake season episodes coming up.
We should make some like really gay T-shirts that like mimic the salt life, but call them like snack life or something.
That is pretty gay.
Yeah.
Could like say, show me your snake.
That's a good one.
That's really gay. And just have like maybe like just like a rattle down at the bottom of the front of the shirt, just like a maybe like a 6 or 7 rattle,
right down by your
just
belt
average,
line. Yeah.
Just long enough to where you're like, yeah, that'll do, but it's not like,
not too much.
Yeah.
Yeah, makes sense.
I better just stop now before I get carried away on that.
Wheels turning.
Oh yeah, it's burning up here. So,
but let's go over the rules. The laws for catching a snake. You had to count the scales on the back end of it,
The
right?
strudel scales, yeah.
Yeah, that's what they're called. But yeah, that's like the biggest thing. Like everyone, when you talk about like, oh, I'm going snake hunting, they're like, oh, you just go out and start killing snakes. I'm like, no, you gotta catch them alive and
Keep
you
them
have-
alive, really.
Yeah, you have to keep them alive the whole time, and you have to sex them. You can only keep males over 42 inches, and you have to, like you said, you have to count their subcaudal scales to.
Well, so that's like what you said there. Like as soon as you get on the topic of snake hunting with somebody that's unaware, and they just assume you're just out there like killing snakes. Like no, you like handle them. They have to be 42 inches. They have to be a male. First question you get, well, how do you know if it's a male?
Yeah.
You look for a dick and balls.
Yeah, yeah. A lot of people don't know this, but snakes, they are well hung.
Yeah. It's real easy to tell. They be swinging down there.
Just dragging it in the dirt. So back to Frank here.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you got to do? So you catch the snake.
And you look at, they're called subcaudal scales, and it's all the scales that are after its vent down to just before the rattle, and you count those, and if it's over, is it 20 or 21? 21 scales
Or more.
It's a male, and that's not 100%, but it's the preferred method of sexing a snake for
And it's what's
someone
approved by the state.
Yes, it's what they approve of, because the way to 100% tell is by probing them. You put something in their vent, but for someone that's not trained,
That's where you see the dick. You feel the dick and balls.
yeah, exactly. But if you're not trained to do it that way, you can harm the snake, and they don't want you doing that. So counting the subcaudal scales is like 95% accurate, and they say that's good enough. If you have a snake that's got 21 or more subcaudal scales, it's over 42 inches. It's all yours.
Their head is shaped differently too.
Yeah, you can kind of tell just by looking at
It's
them.
kind of like all animals. It seems like males typically have like a bigger, blockier shaped head.
Yeah. And the other thing we've also noticed, we are at 100% for if the snake is 42 inches, it's been a male.
Yeah.
We have yet to find, and we've handled a lot of snakes. We have yet to handle one that was over 42 that was a female.
Yeah.
So just to give you that idea.
Not to say you won't find one, but
Yeah.
for the most part, everything that we have found, not for the most part, everything that we have found over 42 inches has been a male.
And I think we're approaching triple digits on snakes.
I would definitely say
handle-
we're in triple digits on handling snakes.
Like one day we had, or one weekend, I think we had 35,
Mm-hmm.
which is, I think, totally wild to a lot of people, including myself when we first started. I had no idea that there was that many rattlesnakes in PA.
Yeah, I didn't either. And you lived in rattlesnake country for
Yeah.
4 years.
Yeah. And
Like
I
one
saw
of our hottest spots for snake hunting is right where you lived.
Yeah, and I hiked all the time down there, and I saw two.
Mm-hmm.
So where they're at, they're plentiful, but you have to be where they're at, which I know
And
sounds
you gotta
dumb.
pay attention for them.
Yeah, because I think a lot of people think it would be easy just like listening for them rattling, but they won't rattle until you're within striking distance. So you've got to be very careful, and it's always preferred to spot them before you hear a rattle, because if you hear a rattle, you're in the danger zone. So you definitely want to avoid that, or slipping on a rock
Yeah.
and finding
Never
your first
done
one. But so, Frank, because you seem to have the best knack for it, it's not an easy process for any of us. But it's easy to say, oh yeah, you just have to count at subcaudal scales and measure it. But how do
Real
you?
quick, do these scales stick out? Like, are they quite different from?
Oh yeah, when you look at the bottom of a snake, you can very clearly tell which scales you're looking at, and they start right after the vent, so right behind their asshole. You start counting those, and then
And they're
when you
pretty
get-
wide, right? They're about
Yeah, they're-
an inch wide, and
yeah, they're very noticeable. And once you get close to the rattle,
You'll get,
there's
like, double
different
scales.
yeah, that start splitting, and there's multiple scales on the width of the snake,
Mm-hmm.
and those ones aren't subcaudal scales, but you want the ones that are whole scales the whole way across the bottom of the snake after the vent. Those are the ones you're counting.
And just to give people an idea, you're not going to, at least in our experience, you're not going to find one with like 30 or 40 subcaudal scales.
No.
You're going to find them with 21, 22, 23. Like, there's usually not
19
a ton.
or 20, yeah, it's
it's
there's
all-
not a big range that you're
Yeah.
gonna find. It's
Yeah,
gonna
females
be-
will have like 19 18, somewhere in there. A male will have,
21,
20, 22. Yeah.
I don't think we've ever seen more than 23.
Yeah. So that's just another thing to keep in mind. So like when you're counting them, it always seems like, oh, is it going to have enough? Because like it's right down to the last one usually to get that count. But how are you doing this safely?
So find a snake, say, all right, we're going to handle this one, because we don't handle every snake we see.
Yeah,
If
when we
it's-
first started, we did. But now that we've been experienced, handled enough, we
Yeah.
kind of can tell right away if it's worth doing it.
Yeah, so...
Because you're not like... You don't want to distress the snake if you don't have to either.
No, exactly. You can observe it and have a good time looking at it and stand around it and
Take a quick picture.
yeah, take a quick picture. I think you're neat, but I'll keep my distance. So yeah, we decide we're gonna handle it, and we use tongs for it. And
Smooth tongs, preferably. And
yeah, and we used to use tongs that had they weren't teeth per se; they were rounded, but
ridges or so.
yeah, I would say more like ridges. And it seemed like those scuffed up the scales a little bit and were a little bit harder on the snake. So we modified them a little bit or got different tongs that didn't
You can just
have that.
electrical tape them too.
Yeah, that's what I did with mine. And it's just a lot
It doesn't
easier.
help you catching them at all.
No, not at all.
so-
It doesn't add any traction to it. It's,
Yeah.
but it's a lot easier on the snake if it's smooth. So once you get a hold of it, we just kind of get it to an area that you're safe to work with it in.
Yeah.
You're usually around rocks and stuff, so we find a big rock to set it on so we can have good footing. You're not falling on top of the snake trying to handle it. And we always have tubes to, fish their head into. And that's kind of...
It's an art.
Yeah, you got to have a
And
little
it
bit
depends
of a
on the
knack
snake.
for it. Yeah, some snakes are very receptive to going in the tube, and it takes 5 seconds to get them in. Other ones that are a little bit more wound up kind of don't want to go in. They'll kind of pull their head away, but they're never like striking like crazy. We've only had a couple snakes that are really eager to strike, and they almost never strike at the tube. Like it's just
Yeah. And one thing too, just to give you an idea, so like when we say a tube, when we first started, you can actually, we actually went to a Walmart and bought some cheap fishing poles because a lot of cheap fishing poles come in these clear plastic tubes that happen to be the right diameter.
yeah.
But we found with like the stickers and stuff on the side, the snakes see them better and were less receptive to it. So they do sell kits of snake tubes that are all different sizes depending on the snake you're handling. And that does make it a little bit nicer because they're clear and seems like the snakes are a little bit more receptive, and you can get the proper diameter for the snake you're handling.
Yeah, and we usually just I still have the fishing pole tube, and it works great. And you want to be careful, like Nick said, with having the right diameter tube, because if you're handling a little bit thinner snake, they go farther into the tube before it fills the tube, which you don't want. You want to.
You basically want the tube to get tight, but you don't want them
Being
a foot
able-
into the tube
Yeah,
either.
you just want it to be able to get over their head and be
Enough to where they can't turn around.
6-8 inches past their head. And if it's too narrow and you're trying to get them into that point, they can turn around in the tube and come back out, and it's
Had
just-
that happen.
Yeah, it's not a good time. A little scary, and then you're throwing your shit, and it's not great, not ideal. So you get them in the tube, and just hold on to the tube and the snake. Make sure you're keeping them in there.
Yeah,
Put
it's
a
like
couple
basically-
fingers on the tube, couple fingers on the snake.
Yeah, it's like pointer finger, middle finger on the tube, depending on which way you're holding it, and then your ring finger and pinky around the scales of the snake.
Yeah.
That just kind of keeps it locked in place.
Yeah, that way he's got no chance of coming out, so you got him very secure. And then from there, we start by counting the scales and decide, okay, it's a male. Then we just all have tape measures, pull tape, looking for 42 inches. As soon as it's over 42 and it's a male, you have a legal snake, you can keep it, which we found quite a few snakes that were over 42 that we didn't keep. We're not looking to keep every snake that we catch.
Yeah.
So.
One, you can only keep one snake a year, and once you keep one, you aren't even allowed to handle them.
Yeah, correct.
So because we like doing it so much, it's not worth keeping, because we've all got our first one, I hate to really keep, a 42-inch snake when, there's chances of, 50, 52s, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And we've gotten pretty good at just like somebody could look at a deer and say, yeah, that's probably 115 inch, 120. We've gotten pretty good at like that's a legal snake.
Yeah, as soon as you see it, you got a pretty good idea.
Yeah, it's just got a different girth to it that you know for sure.
Yeah.
And you guys haven't caught any copperheads, right?
No, we've never even seen a copperhead. Granted, we don't really target them either. We are more interested in the rattlesnakes. Me personally, I'm more interested in the rattlesnakes because they're bigger, and I don't know. To me, they're just way cooler.
Those copperheads, I heard they're pretty mean.
Yeah, I've also heard that they're very aggressive.
And they're more of a timber snake, so we're usually out in the open or...
Yeah, we're usually, walking power lines or something, or anywhere you can find rock
We're giving our secrets away.
Yeah.
Never mind.
We don't actually do that.
Yeah, that's a myth. I'm just trying to send you guys in the wrong direction. But yeah, I mean, we don't really frequent areas where you would find copperheads, and I don't really know a whole lot about it because I've never done it, so I don't know the best places to go for copperheads.
Some of the people we've run into on the trails said that they like white birch trees. But like I said, we mainly target the rattlesnakes because they're just so much bigger, and I don't know, rattlesnakes to me are cooler.
Yeah, I agree. They're definitely cooler.
Same reason I, like hunting whitetails, my area, like they're just cool, So, but like Frank said, we handle a lot of snakes that we don't keep, just because one, we're helping the state out with, trying to locate where snakes are at.
And that's another thing that people don't understand with it is you have to document every snake you handle, every snake you see. Even if you don't handle it, you have to document it, latitude, longitude, and send that to the state after the season. And they use all of that information to find concentrations of snakes and where people are going. And they use that information for, gas lines, and so they know they're not...
Because they're a protected species, so they want to, if they can locate a den, they want to steer away from that when they're building.
Yeah, doing roads or gas lines, power lines, anything like that they have to disturb the environment. They want to make sure they're not in a big hot spot of snakes that they're gonna.
And for safety of the crews that are in the area too, because a lot of the equipment that they use, the snakes enjoy, the heat that they put off, and there's a bunch of different reasons that they want that information. So you're out there more or less, like they give you you can keep one, I think, as an incentive to do it. But we've gotten to a point where it's just, I wouldn't keep anything under 50.
Yeah, I think most people that do it are that way. After they get one or two, they enjoy going out and doing it and handling them. But that's the extent of that people aren't keeping a snake every year usually. Yeah,
and I think I'm a bit of like an adrenaline junkie, and something about handling like a venomous snake on their level and stuff, like it's just cool to me. And I think that snakes get a bad rap. They are not nearly as like aggressive and nasty as people make them out to be.
Yeah,
I'm not saying that they're cuddly or anything, but like Frank said, we've handled a lot of snakes, and very few of them have struck. Only one or two I've seen like actually release venom. So that's just something to keep in mind, but you still obviously respect them.
Yeah, you always want to treat them all like they're gonna strike and be able to hurt you, but that's not been our experience.
So speaking of like power lines and stuff, it goes into more than just power lines in open areas. One of the things that Frank and I have learned over the years of doing it is that snakes really like the highest points of the areas you're in, preferably above 1,800 foot of elevation. And that's local to where we're hunting. There's a lot of places in PA that the peaks of hills and stuff aren't 1,800 feet, so that's all so we've pretty much found that the top third of a hill or a mountain or whatever you want to call it is where you're going to find snakes. We've got a few places that are some of the higher points in the state that are 2,400 feet. You'll find them all the way down to about 1,800, and it seems like there's almost a hard line where they shut right off. We'll find a dozen or two snakes on one side of a hill, and as soon as you break below that point, they're nothing. Could be perfect habitat, no snakes.
Yeah.
So it's kind of something a little different. And then with the rattlesnakes, there's two different variations in color. If if you want to elaborate
there's-
elaborate on that a little bit.
Yeah, there's yellow phases, which is what it sounds like. They're more of a yellow, a lot lighter color, which helps you see their patterns a lot more.
I think they're a prettier snake for sure.
And then black phases are just a lot darker, and it's tough to see all their different markings, but they're still a very cool looking snake.
Yeah, and there's variances into both of those, and we found some that are like,
Half
they're
and half.
yeah. We found yellow phases that halfway down they turn black. I've never seen one start black and turn yellow. But then our buddy Jared, back when he was hunting with us, he found that one that was like jet black.
Yeah,
I mean, it was like
no marking on it.
it was
at
like
all.
a midnight black. Like the picture looks like it was colored in with a Sharpie marker. It's that dark. Like
Yeah, it's really dark. It's
Any chance the mics didn't catch that?
there's a very small chance. That was probably the girliest fart I've ever heard in my entire life. In Pride Month to boot.
pride.
Oh, goodness.
So thanks for that, Tom.
I was trying to just breeze right by it, but
Yeah, Tom was making his own breeze. We were idiots.
anyway, back to what we were talking about. What were we talking about?
Color phases and
Yes,
snakes.
color phases.
Sharpie marker.
Yes, yeah. That one is the only one I've ever seen like that. Like that was the blackest.
And it was a
phase.
small snake, but it
Yeah.
was very cool. I mean, he was only, I think, like 32 to 36 inches,
Yeah,
somewhere
it
in there.
wasn't very big, but it was a very cool looking snake. Had a really long rattle on it.
Yeah,
like
it did.
14, 15 rattles.
Yeah, that's a lot of rattles. So that's another thing, and there's not a lot of data. Like if you go to like research rattlesnakes and rattlesnake hunting in Pennsylvania, there's almost no data.
No.
So a lot of the stuff that we're talking is 100% our experience. And what we've noticed after, probably 100 plus snakes handled, your average snake is somewhere around the 7 to 8 rattles. The most we found, I think, is 14, and we've seen them as little as 2 or 3.
Yeah, we've seen some big snakes. The first snake my dad ever caught was a legal snake. It was like 45 inches, but it only had 3 rattles on it because
Yeah.
they break off so easily. It's just dead skin.
You can't count the rattles in the length, correct?
No, that's a good point.
Yeah, that is correct. The rattle does not
Thanks for bringing
count
that up.
for the length.
And it's because they break off so easily. You have to go to the base of the first rattle. That's
Yeah.
as far as you can go.
Yeah.
Another thing we do, and there's nothing like in the handbook that says 42 inches live, 42 inches dead, or anything. It's just 42 inches. So what we've developed is we won't keep anything that we can't measure a live length of 42.
Yeah, because they do relax and you can stretch them out better. Because like when they're in the tube, they're kind of curled up a little bit, and it's tough to get a perfect, accurate measurement. But even if we see that it's coiled up a little bit and we're at like 41 and a half, we didn't see 42 on the tape, we're not keeping
Now
it.
we might spend a little extra time, trying to get it as straight as possible to get that. But if we can't see 42 on a live measurement, we won't keep it.
Yeah, even if you know it's going to extend and relax once it's dead, you do not keep it unless you see 42 on the tape.
Yeah, I think that's just a fair rule to go by. To me, it's the same as trying to ground check a buck.
Yeah.
If you've got 3 up and you're like, maybe that's a third one up, and then you shoot it and then check it, it's like, to me, that's not the right way to go about it.
No.
Because you can easily get burned doing it that way.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's what we've developed, and it works for us most of the time. Actually, the smallest snake we've kept was measured at like 44. And that was somebody that was with us, that was their first snake. I'm totally cool with, we've taken a lot of people out to experience that with them, because it is something that's tough to dive into if you don't know anything about it, or you didn't grow up in an area that has them.
Yeah, going off and getting into it on your own is not the easiest thing to do, and that's how we approached it. We tried talking to a couple people that we knew that had done it before, but there's just not a lot of information to get out there.
And I think you and I, going off on our own, started to find a lot more success than anybody we were talking to.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think that's just because we were willing to just hike 10, 15 miles a day, and we weren't afraid to, this place sucks, let's go drive 3 hours and find somewhere else. because that's another thing that we haven't brought up on this episode, is that there's a pretty small window that we've found that's like the sweet spot for snakes. We don't usually find them before 10 a.m., but it's more or less, I think it's when the dew lifts. For whatever reason, we don't ever find snakes when there's still dew on the grass. So as soon as that dew lifts, you can expect to see them at the bases of rocks. And by like noonish, they're going to be out on top of the rocks sunning. Seems like by 2 o'clock, they're back down into their dens. And at that point, usually we've about had it for the day, but we've also ventured off into the timber, and we'll start to find snakes in the woods more after 2 o'clock. But it seems like when we go, it's 90 plus degrees, and you hike from, usually it's a good hour hike from your truck to your spot you want to go. So you're starting your hike 8:30, 9 o'clock, getting to where you want to go. And then, hike for 4 or 5 hours looking for snakes. By that point, you're usually a good 5-6 miles from the truck, and it's you're about ready to just start meandering your way back.
Yeah.
Sometimes you think you can find a shortcut through the woods back to the truck.
Yeah, that usually doesn't work.
No, Austin wasn't with us for that one, but we were.
Jared wasn't. I thought
Jared,
he was
I think
going
that was
to
the
die.
last time he came with us. Yeah, it was.
I think it was.
I was there on that one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, I think part of that was my fault. So we were at the base of we were at the truck, and people were grabbing water and stuff, and Jared went to grab a cup. I was like, "Oh, Jared, I got plenty. Don't worry about it." And I don't drink nearly as much water as I should on those hikes, but I don't know. I'm fine. To me, I'll find a creek along the way, fill up a bottle, I'll be fine. But anyway, so we're a good at least 6 miles from the truck, and then I believe Frank's dad was like, well, we can go 6 miles back, or I think if we cut through this line, we could get it down to like 3 or 4.
And he wasn't wrong. It was shorter.
But it was mountain laurel.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was not a fun walk.
You were high stepping the entire time over through mountain laurels. From about 4 foot away, you could not see somebody next to you. It was nasty, like bear country, and it was hell. And
We
Jared,
actually did see a bear.
not on that hike.
That wasn't that hike?
No, we saw that on. I think it was the first time we took Austin. We saw a pretty good sized bear. I actually pulled out the repellent because I came up around this hill and I was at like 30 yards from a black bear. I was like,
Little close.
yeah. I usually keep a high powered.
You saw a heck of a
repellent.
buck too, didn't you?
Yeah, Austin and I seen a hell of a
yeah.
buck in velvet, Big 10. That was a hell of a deer
Yeah.
bounding away from us.
Too bad that was a pretty far away spot.
Yeah, we were not close to the truck. So we have a couple different places. Some it's like that miles before we can get to where we want to go. Other places we've lucked out that we found that you can pretty much park the truck and walk trails. It just all depends on the day. Actually we took Austin the first time Austin came with us. We took him to our hot spot where we find our biggest snakes, and we got there. It was raining. There was cloudy. There was no snakes. We had hiked, I think, 4 miles. Never saw a snake.
I found that rat snake.
Yeah, you did find a rat snake. Big one, actually. And
That thing was long.
Frank and I just opted to burn some time, but we ended up going a couple hours west and regrouped and got into snakes almost immediately. So it was worthwhile. So I think it's worth mentioning that, if you're in an area that you think that there should be snakes, but they're just not there, don't spend all day looking for them. Go somewhere else that you think that you could get to them, because sometimes, you just got to have the right sun, you got to have the right weather, and 3 hours west or east or north or whatever can make all the difference in weather.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's pretty much all I got on snakes. It's like you said,
until we start getting into them. Like I said, by the time this episode comes out, we'll be into the season. So
I'm thinking the week after my bachelor party, I might be able to get away which would be like 2 weeks from now.
yeah,
So I'm gonna try and. Oh, actually, no, that ain't gonna work. I got a wedding that day, so I'm gonna get out there. Probably that following weekend then. So we'll get there.
figure it out.
We'll figure it out.
How long what's the season?
It
go
goes
to?
from
to July 31st, from the second Saturday of June to July 31st.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think I can probably. I think that last weekend of June would be the first weekend I can go. But that's all right. That's all I need is one weekend. I just need to get my fix.
Yeah,
You
that's
know.
all it is.
I just need to handle a rattlesnake and I'll be good. But Tom, I know you're a wealth of knowledge on rattlesnakes, so is there anything you need to say before we wrap this up?
Nope.
All right. Well, snake season's among us. If you're not in Pennsylvania and you really like rattlesnakes, maybe it's worth, you got nothing else going on. Turkey season's over. Deer season isn't here yet. Maybe it's worth the drive to come check it out. If you're cool, let us know. Maybe we'll take you. But on that note, turkey season's over, but snake season's in, so you guys know what to do. Get outside.